Dennis Doran has successfully served the construction industry for over 30 years. It's my pleasure to welcome him to Construction Genius today. He's been a contractor, a consultant, a strategic trainer and facilitator, and a development coach. Two words have continued to follow Dennis throughout his career, and that's people and service. And he is convinced that soft skills or people skills have a fundamental strategic importance in your business. Because if you can master those skills, you can build relationships. And as you know, construction is a relationships game. And the stronger your relationships, both internally and externally, the more substantial your profits will be. Enjoy my conversation here today with Dennis. Feel free to share this with other folks who will benefit from the discussion. And thanks again for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Dennis, welcome to Construction Genius. Thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
You have over 30 years of experience working in the construction industry. And over that time, you've become convinced that what sets apart the great leaders from the merely good leaders in construction companies is their soft skills. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
In the simplest sense, it means that really great leaders are very aware of themselves, and they're also aware of the people they lead. And they demonstrate through their words and their actions an attitude of caring and interest in the people that help them to be successful in serving their customers.
How do you become more aware of yourself?
Well, some people are naturally self-aware. Again, it is in itself a soft skill or quality of a person to describe them as being self-aware, which means that they understand how they respond to what goes on around them in terms of their emotions. And we're getting right into a part of this whole issue of soft skills that some leaders, particularly the ones that are not quite seeing the importance of soft skills, kind of just put their hands up at. And that is this notion that one of the things that we as people need to be aware of is what we're feeling as we experience our life moment to moment, whether it's at work or other places. So, the leaders who get this have a good understanding about how they experience their day-to-day. And then they can take that understanding of themselves and then dealing with others, they are able to be more aware of the other people, whether it's a direct report, whether it's a customer, whether it's another contractor, an engineer, an architect, whoever it may be. They're aware of that person in terms of what may be going on with them in terms of their feelings or emotions on a given day in a given situation. And they're able to act in a way that gives them the opportunity to be as successful as they can be with each and every interaction they have with that person and with people in general. So if you've got a leader that has that level of what is known and written about increasingly, which is this notion of emotional intelligence, the natural friction between the part of your brain that controls emotions and the part of your brain that deals with rational thinking, they're usually head and shoulders above other leaders and tend to have greater success. And I always like to mention, I'll probably say it several times in our conversation, there are also people that tend to have happier lives.
Sometimes when you're in a leadership role, you kind of get a kick out of it. And part of the kick that is almost unavoidable at times is the fact that you know that you have this sense of influence on other people, that they respond to you as opposed to you having to respond to them. And how does an emotionally intelligent leader or someone who is self-aware, how do they manage that aspect of themselves and how they show up as a leader?
Well, again, since the given here would be that they do understand themselves. And so if they understand themselves, they understand that they have an ability through how they express themselves and how they act to influence people. Now, we all know that if you read the general knowledge about what being influential is all about, the most substantial way to influence a person is with facts. So you could roughly equate facts to being the hard skills, to that leader being able to say, well, I've done 50 projects just like this, and here is the technical issue that was the make or break, and I want to make sure you address that.
Right.
Now, that's influential. You could also argue, depending on, again, how they present themselves, it could just them using their power, and in this case, their power, which comes from their position rather than from their persona or how they behave. They simply use their power and say, this is it. I've seen it 50 times. Just take care of this. The leaders who, again, are interested in trying to, on a moment-to-moment basis, their thought is, influence is a good word, but it's a word that you use in a companion with other words that describe, again, the effect that a leader has. Great leaders are good at motivating people. Great leaders can take it to the higher level, which is just a very small fraction of all leaders. Those are the leaders that can inspire people.
Well, it's interesting because in construction, there's many ways to motivate. One way that I hear many people is, hey, listen, I've told you to do this, and if you don't do it, then I'll find someone else who can do it. Mm-hmm. And that's a form of motivation, but it sounds like you're talking about something a little bit deeper here.
Much deeper. That is a way to motivate people. It's when you look at this whole notion of what are the techniques to motivate a person to act, to respond, to do what you tell them to do, you're talking about using fear as a motivator. Right. And fear is not something which is a sustaining motivation. It, again, in construction, we might say a boot in the rear end, or we might even use a shorter term for that.
You're right.
But yes, the leaders in my generation who are still living in the past, if you will, not recognizing that the people they're leading are not all within 2 or 3 years of their age. Right. Some may be 20, 30, or 40 years younger than they are, and they're not recognizing that I just can't just walk out there and just tell them, if you can't get this right, you're out of here. Now, if the person they say that to if that comment is based on a period of observation, seeing how they're doing whatever it is that the leader doesn't think they're doing as they need to do it, that's within the framework of the process of providing feedback. And it requires a leader, a manager, whoever it is that's providing the feedback, to think about, what is my purpose here? What do I want to get out of this interaction with that person? If I just want to tell them, if you don't get it right, you're out of here, that isn't constructive interaction. That's just demeaning the person.
Why don't leaders value soft skills in construction companies as much?
Again, there's a little bit of a generational flavor to this, but in general, leaders that don't value soft skills, they don't recognize that in terms of their ability to lead, that soft skills, which really aren't skills. That's, again, maybe one of the reasons. There's a book actually out there. I have it on my shelf somewhere. The title of the book is "Soft Skills Are Hard to Learn." It's a little play on the soft, hard part. But again, soft skills aren't really skills. There is a critical skill that's central to, again, allowing others to come to understand and appreciate who you are, and that's communication.
Okay.
But that is a skill which is central or fundamental, or, as I say, a core competency for every person, whether they're a leader or not, to recognize the importance of understanding what communication is and value it as a skill that needs to be worked on every day. Every person I know, including myself, can learn something about how to better communicate, how to say it differently, how to emphasize things. So the soft skills are not really skills. They really are the qualities, behaviors, or attributes, the manifestations of a person's values. So when we talk about an example of a soft skill, the number one soft skill based on the survey that I did in my book, was trustworthy. So to describe a person as being trustworthy, that says something about their quality they possess. And it also happens to be what I call the grand slam quality, because it really implies several others, like honesty, integrity, being ethical.
What do you mean when you say this person or this leader is trustworthy?
Well, I'll say it simply. If you say that a person is trustworthy, they are worthy of you believing that your interaction with them that the experience of interaction will be what you expect it to be, based on how you come to know them, and over a period of time, you will come to trust them. So again, the term trustworthy, it means that they demonstrate through their actions and their words that they are honest, which means honest, and I don't have to define that they are ethical, that means they do morally right things, and that they have integrity. The simplest definition of integrity, which I think is so operational, is that if I possess integrity as a quality, that means that if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And in the construction world, as you know from your experience, Eric,
Yep.
in the construction world, if you tell the customer that your crew is going to be on the site at 7 o'clock to start work on day one of the project, if they're not on the job site at 6:45 and they do that for a few days in a row, the general contractor or the owner's representative is going to say, these guys are a bunch of goofballs.
Right.
They said they were going to be here on time, but I told them what on time means is that they're ready to work at 7 o'clock, which translates into they need to get there sooner than that.
With this idea of being trustworthy, it's linked intimately with the way that you're performing on the job, with the way that you're performing a project. But when you mention this idea of soft skills and developing soft skills in the construction industry, you begin to get this pushback sometimes. You're saying that it's the core of what sets apart the great leaders from the merely good leaders.
Yeah.
So what's the consequence of not valuing soft skills for a construction company?
The most valuable reason on a sustaining basis to value soft skills is that how people see you in your words and your actions is the base upon which they make decisions about whether or not they want to have a relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in the construction business, and I get up in front of groups of folks to talk about soft skills as part of a project management class or even estimating. I talk about the importance of building relationships with the people that you work for. Your customers, whether it's the builder, whether it's the owner, the general contractor. And if you don't present yourself in a way that they want to have a relationship with you, then you're not going to have the business. They'll go to somebody else. Again, I heard numbers of stories in the interviews I did with folks about the relationships they had with people for 20, 30 or more years, and what it was like when times were rough, like the last recession, what it's been like even though industry hasn't been smashed to smithereens as a result of the current crisis we're in. A lot of them have been damaged quite a bit.
Yep.
But there are numbers of those that first, with the leadership of the construction company, they found a way, using outside help as appropriate in some cases, but they found a way to make sure that the people that were valuable to them, that were part of their organization, they found a way to keep them, as any good contractor does.
Yes.
The customers find a way to give you some work to do,
Yes.
To tide you over.
Yes.
And these kinds of things happen because, to put it in a very simple word, because they like you. They want to do business with you. I mean, again, we all know owners in particular, but also GCs. You talk to trades contractors, they continue to have the stories about the GCs. All they want to do is beat the crap out of us on price. They don't care about quality.
Right.
All they care about is getting the job done, blah, blah, blah. And that's all true, because at the end of the day, you still have to do the job.
Right.
But if you show a level of interest in your customer, they will return that by showing a level of interest in you. Motivates them to do that is because they like who you are.
Right.
And more importantly, and I use this word in my book, and I emphasize this when I give talks, soft skills are about how you are when you're doing your job. There are two ways to get someone to do something. Tell them what to do. Just say, get it done.
Right.
Or say, here's a task I need you to perform. I know you haven't done it before. If you have any questions, I'll be nearby. So it takes 3 times longer, several seconds rather than 1 second. Say, just do that.
Right.
And often, and again, we've all seen this, often the new kid on the block, whether it's an apprentice, a fresh college who's now the assistant project manager or field engineer on a construction site, their supervisor, the boss, the project manager, a superintendent, if it's an apprentice or a journey person, will say, do this, and they'll give them the task to perform. And they'll add to that, do you understand? And the immediate response is what? Yeah.
Right.
And then they walk away and said, I guess I should have told him I didn't understand what he said.
Right.
Because they didn't recognize that in order for them to begin to build the relationship with the person giving them the instructions, they need to demonstrate a quality to them that they may not possess, or that they don't recognize the importance of. That once you say that, one of the things you need to do is you got to make sure that you're seen as a person who is caring enough to make sure that they get the instructions right.
So that's interesting, because if you're going to be able to develop relationships with people, and this may sound obvious, you have to demonstrate to them that you care about them. And some of this dynamic of the sort of the shrug of the shoulders at the soft skills or the glazing over of the eyes is generational, as you were saying. So what can folks who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, what can they learn from folks in their 20s and 30s about soft skills? What are some of the primary soft skills that the younger generation tend to possess more instinctively that folks who are older can learn from them?
Yeah. The younger generations, I know I'm almost tempted to read one or two short passages out of my book, because one of the things that I did to share the learning that I experienced in the journey of writing my book was that I interviewed people in different generations.
Yeah.
And I asked them questions about things like, what does trustworthy mean to you? And can you give me an example in the form of a story?
Okay.
So in the book, trustworthy is talked about not simply by describing it, but also by providing a story or two. And the stories are from.
So give me a story from the younger generation that what they mean by trustworthy.
Well, I'll read a few sentences to you.
Sure.
So here's a millennial who explained what trustworthy was to them, and they said it's being able to rely on someone, not having doubts, and being able to give someone a task or a responsibility, knowing that they'll carry it out and bring up any concerns or questions they may have. Trust is everything to me. It's one of the main building blocks in life. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything. And he goes on to talk more about what it means to him. And then he talks about his relationship with the project manager and how he was given a task to do. He wasn't entirely sure that he was going to do it correctly, but he did. And the result of that was that his project manager said, it seems to me that I can trust you to do this kind of stuff, so I'm going to start to give you more responsibility. And again, we've got the back of the hand slaps against the millennial generation, which is now also getting slapped against the Z's and the Y's in the same manner.
Everyone gets slapped.
that they're lazy, they're this, they're not committed, they're not team players, they're not long-term, blah, blah, blah. Well, again, there are poster examples of all of that bad behavior in that generation, as there is of the same kind of bad behavior in every generation.
Absolutely.
The millennials that I've experienced, the ones that I interviewed for this book, and they're in their careers, they're succeeding because they have good soft skills, they have good qualities. And one of the qualities they possess, they're coachable. They want to be coached. They want to be mentored. And frankly, some people may come into a trade or into a managerial related job, an operations job in a construction company, and they may come with the right education. Maybe they got the engineering degree, the construction management degree, and it feels to them like, well, this is the industry I want to be in. And they get into the job and they're just not good at it.
Right.
And they could be not good at it for technical reasons, but actually more often than not, they're not good at it because of the non-technical reasons.
Interesting.
Because of their ability to how they join a team, how they work with others, how they take feedback, how they take on responsibility. And again, at the end of the day, it's kind of my repeat bottom line. It's how they are with the person they work for, with the team they're on. When a customer shows up in a job site, we may know about a particular project engineer that they're a bit of an introvert, to use a term, which is descriptive, not diminishing, but descriptive. And so one of the things that their project manager needs to help them with is, I know you're kind of shy, but it's really important if the owner rep shows up on the job site, if you're not in the middle of performing a task, that you at least lift your head up and greet them and say, how you doing? Nice to see you. And then you go back to work. And I know that's hard for you, Eric, but it's important because we want to make sure the customer knows that everybody on the team is aware of who they are, shows them deference. And at the end of the day, good customers will appreciate the fact that you lifted your head just to say, good morning, hope you're having a good day.
How do I begin to identify the specific behaviors that I should be working on or changing that might be able to move the needle for me?
Yeah. Well, again, this shouldn't surprise you, but there are terrific tools in the form of.
What do you think was some good assessment?
If someone said to me, Dennis, if I were going to use two assessments, just two,
right,
to help me gather some facts about my soft skills, about my qualities, about me, which ones would you recommend? I would say to them that you should take and use something which is called the DISC behavioral assessment, DISC, the DISC profile. It's the second most widely used behavioral style assessment tool globally. I don't sell it, but that's a fact. And the second thing I would tell them to get, and in fact, if they didn't have time and have an interest in both, I'd say first, buy the book entitled Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Okay.
I talk about it in my book. It's in my resource list at the end. And that book talks about what emotional intelligence is.
Right.
And if someone wanted to improve their ability to manage their emotions, understand how they're seen by people, and also understand the things they need to do to manage their relationship with other people. That book provides an online assessment that presents feedback and information to the reader focused on the two primary competencies that these particular authors and their research yielded with regards to emotional intelligence. And they talk about personal competence and social competence.
Mm-hmm.
The personal is about me, the social is about others. And the assessment actually, and again, we refer to emotional intelligence, the acronym is EQ,
Yep.
as opposed to IQ.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a measurement of your EQ based on this assessment. And it gives you in the book, in the assessment, specific steps, activities, or tasks that you can perform to improve your emotional intelligence in those two competency areas.
And I'll put a link in the show notes to the book, Emotional Intelligence. Give me an example of one specific change that someone can make in a behavioral area that can make a difference in terms of the way they're showing up in their relationships to improve their soft.
A personal planning tool, planning how they use their time.
What does that have to do with emotional intelligence?
Well, because if you're trying to get a bunch of things done and whatever the priority is not getting done because you just are firefighting the things that are going on around you, that's going to raise your level of anxiety. That's going to make you rush. It's help you make mistakes. It's going to cause you to be distracted. The most simple and straightforward reasons that relationships between people, even on a transactional level, are difficult is because one or the other person is distracted because they're thinking about the 5, 6, 10, or 15 other things that are on their list, but it's just a list. So again, from the standpoint of managing self, which is again, kind of the skill area under the personal competence part of emotional intelligence, that's a technique. That's something that can be learned and how to better manage your time. And the consequences of that is that you'll become better organized. You will be able to manage your priorities. You'll feel less pressure. And if you feel less pressure, you're probably going to get things done with a better result.
So that's very interesting because, when I hear soft skills, I'm thinking, oh man, you're going to start digging into my way I act. And I'm not sure if I can change the way I act. But it's kind of encouraging to think about something a little more objective in the terms of how I spend my time, because I totally get what you're saying in terms of if I'm under pressure and if I am always firefighting, then no wonder I show up in conversations with my direct reports and behave, in a way that's detrimental to the relationship. So I appreciate the practicality of that. That's very, very helpful. So what if I've tried to improve my soft skills and it hasn't worked? What should I do?
Well, one of the things that's, again, pretty fundamental to personal improvement as well as professional improvement is it's not something you do by yourself. But the most important thing about using these kinds of tools and techniques is that the leaders, starting at the top, don't simply say, we're going to implement this program and Bill Jones is going to be in charge of it.
Right.
And that's the end of the sentence.
Right.
They have to be part of it. They have to own it. They have to understand it. They have to use the term, they have to walk the talk. So they need to learn about themselves and then model the behaviors of a leader that helps people understand that this is important. It's important for you. It's important for us. It's important for our customers.
I think that speaks to some of the frustrations that construction company executives have. They understand they have an issue with leadership. They throw some money at the problem. They send people to training, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. And many times the reason it doesn't work is because they themselves are not fully committed to the process. They're wanting their people to get fixed, but they're not willing to do the hard work themselves to buy into it and to support it fully in their organization.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up here, what are some next steps a construction company executive can take in order to make progress in terms of their soft skills?
Well, I think the first step, if they want to make progress, is if they haven't taken stock in themselves, they need to take stock. That's the kind of the fundamental foundation.
Yep.
And as part of that, they also need to openly communicate to their senior leadership team, we have an opportunity. And the opportunity is for us to learn more things about ourselves, individually and together, so that we can do a better job of serving our customers, both our internal customers, the people that work for us, as well as the customers that bring revenue to the top line of our company. And here's what we're going to do and implement a program of further action. And again, another really good instrument, which is offered in a variety of versions or covers or brands, is something which is generically referred to as a 360 assessment.
Yes.
And again, a very, very good tool if used in the proper way. Yeah. So if you want to think about, if I were selling a package of assessments, I would say the EQ assessment, a behavioral assessment, and then thirdly, a 360. That would be a fabulous set of facts for all leadership, all upper management to establish, and then use those facts as a basis for establishing coaching and mentoring relationships.
I know you've got a book here, and I mentioned it earlier, Soft as Steel. Soft as Steel, what does that mean?
It's pretty straightforward, actually, but I mentioned earlier that there's a book out there that says soft skills are hard to learn.
Right.
So right away, the soft versus hard skills issue. My view is that soft skills are essential for building long-term relationships. But as you know, in building high rises, the steel structure is built upon a foundation. That structure is what provides a long-term capital asset to be made available for people to use to conduct business, life, etc. Yep. So steel is important for a long-term lasting structure. Soft skills are important for a long-term lasting relationship. That was the thought. And I should mention two things as closing thoughts. Again, because he's visible as he wrote the foreword to my book, Steve Farber. He has three phrases that I believe in firmly that appeared in his first book, and he's been talking about it ever since. It really is about how leaders and others, everyone, should approach their calling, whatever they're pursuing in their life. He says it this way: do what you love,
right,
in the service of people who love what you do. I think that formula is unassailable.
Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you joining me here today. I'm going to put links in the show notes to the books that you mentioned, and particularly your book, Soft as Steel. I appreciate your generosity, and I wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Eric.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.